everybody, it's Becky Pearson with Pivot Point of View, and tonight I am joined with the one and only TeJay Fenster from Hyannis, Nebraska, out in the middle of ranch country, and we are talking about ranch bronc riding. And so TeJay is here to hopefully bring a little more awareness to the sport. And we are so happy to have you on the podcast tonight, TeJay.
Well,
Thank you for
well,
coming.
thank you for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So give us a little bit of background on you yourself. You're on a ranch up there in Hyannis. Did you grow up there? How'd you get in the middle of Hyannis, Nebraska?
Well, actually, I grew up in a small town called Midwest Wyoming, and just north of Casper, in between Casper and KC, about 50 miles. I grew up riding colts for world champion bulldogger Frank Shepperson, and rode saddle broncs and bulls, and did the ranching thing. And then when I got out of high school, I went and college rodeoed some at Nebraska College of Technical Agriculture, and then transferred to Oklahoma Panhandle State, and then just kind of bounced around the ranches forever and kept rodeoing. And then I quit riding bulls and saddle broncs, and I think in 2011 is the first one I got on as far as a ranch bronc went. And yeah, it was. Other than that, it's taken off from there. So we've been here. I've been on this ranch almost 10 years now, and it's home for us.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you have a family.
Yes, sir. Yeah, or ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I do. I got a wife and three boys, so they're
Good.
they keep us on our toes. Let's say that. The oldest one's 11, and the youngest one's 7 months. So
Okay. Yes, they will keep you on your toes. That's good. So, tell us a little bit more. It sounded like your background was honestly a lot of bulldogging in there because if you started Colts for a bulldogger, and then if you went to Panhandle State, I've heard that's like Bulldogger University, or at least it is now. I don't know if it used to be, but did you ever bulldog too?
I I ran by probably 40 steers, and we used to shoot dog. I was super fortunate, and when Cheyenne would happen, we'd Les Shepperson would get some steers in, and we'd always go, and I'd have Luke Branquino and Billy Buganig and Dean Gorsuch all show up there, and they just run them steers, and I got a haze for them, and we'd shoot dog them, and just anything impossible, and to the point that Les was trying to get me to use a horse, and yeah, I run by about 40 of them and never could crack off, and after that, I said, we said enough was enough. I never could crack off. I stuck to the rough stock side of things. And then even when I got to Panhandle, I was still just getting on saddle broncs and bulls. And I wasn't even getting on broncs, I guess, at Panhandle. I just tore up my bronc saddle. And so I didn't even have a saddle. I was just getting on bulls down there for a while. And that was kind of what turned into the ranch broncs is I never had enough money to afford another association saddle. And so I just started riding in my everyday rig, and one thing led to another.
Yeah, so tell me the difference between ranch bronc riding and saddle bronc riding that you see at the rodeos. Pretty much every rodeo will have saddle bronc riding, but not every rodeo has ranch bronc riding. So tell me the difference.
Yeah, so ranch bronc riding is in your everyday riding saddle. There's always different rules. Some places down south in Texas, a lot of places freehand rule only, and they try to turn it more into association style. And but like up here in the north part, you can use a night latch, you can put a rope on your saddle, anything like that, and ride with two hands and go to the whistle. We get on a lot more colts, a lot of stuff that the saddle bronc and bareback guys don't want to get on
Mhm.
necessarily, and so it gets to that point. Every association's got different rules, and every hometown rodeo's got different rules. But it just depends on where you're at.
Do sometimes do they take a horse that's maybe never been bucked in a rodeo before? Do they kind of sometimes get their start in the ranch bronc riding to
Yes,
see if
ma'am.
they're going to be any good or not?
Yes, ma'am. So in February, first part of February during stock show, they have what they call the Bronx for breakfast, and it's a 30 head long round and then an 8 head short round, and that's all out of Birch Rodeo, and it's all untried colts. They all get their first rider trips, In fact, they had a horse at the NFR this last year they called Moose, that he got his start there. And the two-time world champ Justin Quint got on him in the short round. And yeah, that was the only time he ever got in the Ranch Broncs, and he went right to the Saddle Broncs from there, and has been to there. And there's been a lot. Case in point, 333 Kitty Whistle that's owned by C5. That horse come from Gene King and got his start in the Ranch Broncs, and he's been to the NFR 5 or 6 times. 532 Monster that's owned by Corian Lang. He was a Gene King horse that got started there. I personally have been on Freckles twice, that used to be owned by Mossbrooker Rodeos. I got on him twice in the Ranch Bronc riding, been to the NFR a couple times. So, yeah, up here you do get on some pretty ranked stuff. I'm not going to say it's that way all the time. And then I've also seen a lot of horses that probably should have been to the NFR, one time or another, that they just never got the right chance. For example, Wayne and Jody Larson used to own a horse. They were Bad Medicine Rodeo, and they had a horse they called Stormwatch that was probably one of the rankest horses I've ever seen with my own two eyes, and she never got a chance to go to the pros, and it was almost kind of sad for just because of that reasoning, because that mare was just so good. But all of her colts have been really good too.
Good. Yeah. Yeah, and there's so many programs that are breeding, bred to buck kind of thing, like the bulls. And there's definitely some great lineage in the bucking horses for sure. And you see, well, we know it in just riding horses that if the mare did buck, you can probably bet her offspring are going to buck a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, I'm actually also partners in a rodeo company, and we Barnhart Rodeo, and me and Bronc, we went to college together, and his grandpa's raised some of the best in the world. Had a horse, Riley's Raising Cane. He's been to the NFR. Jitterbug, we've raised some really good ones, and I'm fortunate to be partners with them, and we raise some really good colts. It's a lot of fun.
Sometimes we'll see these we'll see an event at a regular rodeo, but you do have separate associations also just for ranch bronc riding. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So I was a director in the Nebraska States Rodeo Association. It just started 2 years ago with the Ranch Broncs adding on to there. And that was really good. And then I've been a director now for 5 years in the Western States Ranch Rodeo Association, and that's the solo rough stock event in the Western States is the Ranch Broncs, and it's been really good. We've had the 8 Seconds whiskey. They've been a tour stop and really promoted those. And the rule books are great with those. They really want them to be authentic. And where I was the director in the Nebraska States and kind of had to write the rules for that, I've made those rule books identical, and it's been a lot of fun because of it. And you get some overlap. KPRA dang sure has it also, but they want it more like they do down south. They want you to freehand, and if you blow a stirrup, it's a disqualification. Whereas in ours, it's it's a point deduction, but you don't get disqualified for it. The only way you get disqualified, like in the Western States and Nebraska State rules, anywhere I've ever been that I go to, is if you get bucked off or you drop your hack rein.
Okay. Okay. And so they score them. Do they score them similar to regular saddle bronc riding?
Yeah, in the Western States, dang sure. We really push. We actually have a judges clinic and really push. We want to see guys use their horse, and it seems like when Ranch Broncs first come on scene, it was everybody in the background drinking a 6-pack of beer, and they just wanted to be a part of the rodeo, and they would cinch them horses up super tight and pull on them, and I don't know how many times I've been even on my pickup horse and watching a guy just wrench on a colt. And that horse is just rearing up, shaking his head, having a colt fit, and everyone's yelling at him to give him his head. And so we really try to push guys to give them plenty of rein and stick it out there and lift on it like you're supposed to, and lift and stay back and set your feet just like a saddle bronc. I try to ride them as close to a saddle bronc as I can. The only thing I have upside for me is I get 2 hands instead of a free hand. But I tried to mark them out. I tried to let my feet ride just like a saddle bronc horse and really lift on my rein like you should and help them broncs still. There's still a horsemanship to bronc riding, even if it's a little different than if you're riding the everyday saddle horse.
Hmm. Yeah, there's quite a bit of timing definitely involved there. And I tell you what, honestly, bronc riding to me is the prettiest event in rodeo when it is done well. It's not, it wasn't ranch bronc riding, but I remember seeing the prettiest bronc ride I'd ever seen in actually in Superior, Wisconsin back in 1990, probably five. And Mike Uthier was on one, and
He could dang sure scratch one.
oh, yeah. And I mean, I was just in awe of, I mean, he even just pointed every time, every time the front feet hit the ground and he had his free arm up and he pointed, and I just was pretty darn impressed. But yeah, it's an art, and your timing. Do you feel like if you get that mark out, that is what sets up your timing for your whole ride?
Yeah, it does. As I try to tell people, I do a kind of a school and at the end of the year, and me and Justin Quint do, and one of the things I always try to tell these guys when they first start is it's really a dancing partner. You know,
Mm,
you need to be loose and cool and let that horse lead, and when that horse takes that first lead, you need to be able to then stand on the gas pedal and get aggressive in a hurry, and it's
mm,
that timing to make it work. But if you get ahead of them, they're gonna change the lead, go the opposite direction, change up everything, and then you're just getting beat on, and
mm,
it helps a whole lot. Saddle bronc riding, you're above the way the saddles are built and everything. You're above the bronc the whole time. So
mm,
spurring, all that's really quite. It's actually a lot easier to do. And then a stock saddle, everything sits down on that horse. You're
sure.
coming from below your rigging and everything to try to get to the neck. It's a lot harder to do,
Mm,
and that timing makes it ride so much smoother. If you don't get that timing and don't go to spurn, I mean, you just take the cantle in your lower back the whole time, and it just beats you up. But if you can get your timing down and really set your feet, it's like riding a rocking chair.
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the saddle. You said it's just kind of an everyday saddle, but like from what I know from barrel racing, there are certain brands that you can get your feet further ahead on one.
Yep.
Um, and then seat size is a big part of, I ride a bigger seat than most women will because I want to be able to sit back on my horse and I want to be able to get my feet in front of me because he's big and powerful and I want to take a deep seat. What do you like to ride? Can you get your feet more forward? Are they freely swinging stirrups? And then what size seat do you like a big seat? Do you like a small seat? What do you ride?
I stick mainly to just a wade saddle myself. I know a lot of guys that ride a seat rig swell fork, and those dang sure got the freedom to really set your feet and tap off on one.
Mhm.
Um, I've never been a fan of a swell fork saddle. I always felt like when I rode saddle broncs, the one saddle I rode was a broken arrow, and it had a really good pocket, and I could stay back and let go with my feet and just set my feet to really find my target, I should say. So I stick to a Wade saddle, and I don't have any squat tits or nothing on that. I want as little on the front end as possible, just for the simple fact I felt like if I had something in the front, I hit too low in the neck. I wanted to make sure I could get above the brakes and set my feet where they're supposed to. So
Sure.
I stick to that. As far as seat size goes, I would tell anyone, going if you're riding and going to do bronc riding, a bigger seat is never a bad thing. Uh, my everyday rig, I ride a 16-inch. I can get by with a 15 and a half, but I like having a little bit of swimming room. I ride a lot of Colts and stuff, and having that little bit of room to give seems to be nicer. But like bronc riding, I would get in a 16 and a half and not think twice. Just to have when that horse is hanging and kicking, you want to have that timing, that little bit of room to slide forward in your saddle and pick them up. And it seems like if you're in a tighter seat, you got nowhere for your hips to go, and then it just blasts you out of there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure. Stirrup length, then do you go, if you have a bigger seat, do you go a little bit shorter on your stirrups, or how short do you like your stirrups?
As a general rule of thumb, I tell anyone that ever asks me, always go up at least a half a set shorter than what you ride on a riding horse. And the
Okay.
whole case in point on that is, when you put that stock saddle on an everyday riding horse, you got a 3/4 to a 1 inch pad. Well, when you add that on both sides, that makes that horse that much bigger. So then when you slap it on a bareback on a horse, there's not as much there, and your stirrups feel long. So if you at least start off a half an inch or a half a set shorter, you're going to be relatively close. You're going to always be at least a full set or a half a set shorter when you're on a Bronc.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes total sense for sure. So this is kind of a health and wellness podcast for the Western industry. Are there certain things that you do, TJ, to keep yourself fit? Whether it's, on the ranch or riding the ranch broncs, are there certain things that you do to make sure that you're ready to go when you enter up?
Yeah, I'm going to say the best thing I do is I get on a lot of practice horses still. Um,
Hmm.
just because it's hard to get the rust knocked off by not doing it. It keeps you sharp, and being in riding shape is a completely different thing than being in physical shape. And so you can be in the best physical shape in the world and then get on a bronc and just feel super sore. I
Hmm.
like to get on a lot of practice horses, but at home, even with the day to days of running a ranch, I still try to work out and jog and try to keep my cardio up and keep core strength. That's the main thing
Hmm.
is a lot of core strength and then in the wintertime I coach youth wrestling and I go in and help with the high schoolers and that helps majorly. But
Hmm.
anything I can do to try to stay really active and improve myself, as long even sitting at the house, I'll put a weight on the end of my hack rein and just practice on lifting and staying under my rein, staying back and things like that. Even getting on the spur board. It sounds
Hmm.
crazy to say that in a stock saddle, but to get on a spur board and pick a target out there and that's what you try to aim for, it really helps that muscle memory to let go and set your feet.
Yeah. Yeah. In a controlled environment where you can focus on just you. You don't have to focus on what is this
Yep.
horse going to do. And yep. Yep. And so you mentioned that you put on some schools every fall. If somebody thinks they would like to get involved with some ranch bronc riding, how do they get a hold of you? How would they sign up for one of these schools?
Yeah, Justin, Quint, and I we do school every fall, usually about mid-September. We're gonna do one more this fall, and then next year we're gonna do one in May and try to maybe get a jump for guys before the rodeo season really gets rolling.
Hmm.
It's called the Real Deal Bronc Riding School. Yeah, you want to come to it? You just find me on Facebook, Instagram, TeJay Fenster. I'm pretty easy to find, and just reach out to me. And come with grit teeth because we don't call it the real deal for no reason. We butt colts there and we dang sure test you, but you want to get a lot of stuff in 2 days put in there and get things right. When we get through there, everyone should be ready to go and conduct themselves professionally and really go on and shine if they want to. The first year we did it, actually, the women's ranch bronc world champ last year, Katie Coker, come to it, and sure enough, she goes on, turns from there, and now she'll set her feet just as good as any guy. She can flat scratch one when she wants to.
Yeah, well, that was going to be my next question. Like, how many women have you had come through? Because the women's ranch bronc riding has really taken off. I love to see it at Cheyenne. There's been lot more. They had it on the Cowboy channel for a while. They'd have it on there or RFD TV. I'm not sure which one, but have you had quite a few women come through or no?
Yeah, back in the day, so Brittany Miller, she kind of got everyone started, and everyone knows who she is. She'd come, and I was around her a lot. She'd kind of run with the same crowd that I run with, and we'd help her out. But since we started putting on the school, we've had a couple every year. Katie Coker really stands out the most. Zoe Bose Haley, I cannot pronounce her last name, from Montana. She rode come last year and rides really good. And then we actually had a girl from Australia, Emily Halkins, and she's come over every year for Cheyenne and come and stayed at the house for a week. And she's really come a long ways and really kind of the spokesperson for it over there in Australia. She's done a lot for the sport that way. But we get quite a few. I'm all for the women's deal as long as they're in it for the right reasons. I've seen a lot of them that have come in it, and it's the attention and oh, I'm a girl on a Bronc, and it's just like anything. If you're in it for the wrong reasons, it's not the reasons to be doing it. And this sport's way too dangerous. I've seen way too many injuries, and it happens because people aren't dedicated and all the way in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, back in my 20s, late teens, I really wanted to ride saddle broncs, but nobody was doing it. I'm 52. Women weren't doing those things. Yeah. Well, I do think for a little while the WPRA had it as a rough stock event, and then they kind of took,
Yeah, I think so.
yeah. But yeah, by the time I was old enough to get my card for the WPRA, nobody was doing it. And now I'm old and I don't need to break anything. Now I like my bro courses. I will let somebody else ride them when they're a little more bronky. So I
I don't blame you
appreciate
one bit.
yeah, I appreciate it. I love watching it, but it is not my turn anymore. So,
Yeah,
okay.
I know your feelings there. 100%. I'm getting to that way now. Like my wife, she's a pretty good bro racer herself, and we get any of our colts that we raise, this they got any snort to them. I always make sure I ride them. But there's days I'm like, I can't wait for them boys to get old enough to start riding them.
Exactly. Yeah, my mom always used to say, "You kids get on because you guys bounce better than I do." And there's
Exactly.
a lot to that for sure. Okay. Well, anything else that we need to cover, TJ, that we haven't?
No, the one thing I will say, uh, don't be afraid to try it. That's the great thing about ranch bronc riding. Uh, all it takes is a saddle. You can get a hat crane and a halter from anybody. Whereas in the saddle bronc riding, it's going to cost you upwards of 3,000 to get proper gear to get started. Go try it. I know a lot of guys that have got their start in rodeo riding ranch broncs and have turned around and then went on to ride saddle broncs. Or case in point, the 2018 Western States World Champ in the ranch bronc riding is Aaron Mercer, and now he's a two-time BFO World Champ and one of the wildest guys I've ever been around. I never thought I'd see him fighting bulls, but don't be afraid to try it. It's super good sport, and when it gets in and gets going, it's kind of a brotherhood. Everyone has their own kind of crowd, and pick the right crowd. I cannot push it enough that the people you run with makes all the difference in how successful you choose to be in any sport you're in.
Absolutely. Yep. You can't soar like an eagle when you're hanging out with a bunch of turkeys. For sure.
Yep. That's we always said wolves run with wolves, and I was fortunate when I was a rookie. I coming along with the crowd that it was kind of the guys that were paving the way for the sport and had really started spurring, and they had that professionalism and wanted to be something. And I thought
Mhm.
I was doing good, and then they'd bring you back to earth and be like, "Hey, watch this, rookie." And
Mhm.
after a year or so, I got to where then I got the respect and I understood it. And I'm kind of that way now with these young guys that come along. But I
Mhm.
always try to help. Always want the sport. Whether it's a director, me as a contractor, pickup man, even intern. If anyone has any questions, you need want to put on a rodeo and need broncs, whatever you need. I always try to help because I'm just really passionate about this sport and want to see it keep getting bigger. These pre-RCA rodeos that are coming in, like Sydney, Iowa, first weekend of August. We've done this will be our fourth year of having ranch broncs there, and
Mhm.
it's probably the most popular event at that pro rodeo. To be honest with you, you watch the bull riding and even the saddle broncs and bears, and that place gets loud, but
Mhm.
it don't get nearly as loud as when they start bucking them ranch broncs, and it's really cool, and they appreciate it, and now there's more and more rodeos that are getting that way, and C5 and Baker, Montana, we had a 25,000 added colt bucking from C5 last year. So sports going on the up and up, and it takes people like yourself listening to guys like me that maybe are just an average Joe to a lot of people, but in other aspects in this sport, they've kind of been something, and I just appreciate having the opportunity to kind of get some knowledge out there for people.
Yeah, well, I hope it helps spread the word, and we appreciate people like yourself that I know it's a thankless job to be an event director, a thankless job to be a stock contractor. And you get all the gripes and like it is not, you don't do it for the fame and the fortune because there's none of that in those jobs. You definitely have to do it for the passion of it. And so thank you so much, TJ, for taking the time to dedicate to it, to keep growing it. And thank you for being on the podcast. And with that, I think we'll close it out. And Destry, he's my tagline guy, and he always says, let your health be the pivot point to your success. And we wish you all the best with this, TJ. And so thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.